ready? Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The starving or the necessity on eating in the Hanbali madhab. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, salatu wassalam ala Rasulul Kareem, Rabbana taqabbal minna, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, abduka wa rasuluka nabi ummi, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam taslima. Allahumma atina nufusana taqwaha wa zakkiha, anta khayru man zakkaha, anta waliyuha wa mawlaha, Allahumma shukana, amma ba'd. All the praises belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything happens because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the world. And may Allah's peace and blessings be upon His final prophet and messenger, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's the example that we follow. And we'll continue on the knowledge that came to us from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that was taught by Imam Ahmad Ibn Hanbal and in the Hanbali school. The chapter went on Muftar, the starving. And what that means is refers to if they're in the verge of starvation, then they have a leeway to eat things that are normally speaking are forbidden. So let's go through the lesson here. It's not a long one, it's a quick one. Would you like to read the first one, Sheikh Omar? Number 1.
Who is strongly forced by starvation?
Yes. So what happens is sometimes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made things that are haram. A person, they can't eat particular things. But if a person, they're on the verge of starvation, like they go into the forest and they're in extreme circumstance where they need something to eat, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is allowed for the person to do that. Like Allah says in the Quran, whoever is forced by necessity without willful disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah is forgiving and merciful. So a person, they have that leeway. If they are, and that's what this chapter is about, the leeways that a person may have if they are in the case of the need. So that's what happens in some cases where they have the need and the necessity. And also this is the ulama, they talk about that, how much necessity and need that a person they have. And sometimes the ulama, they differ on the extent. Like for example, when a person, they travel, right, then they can shorten the salat and combine the salat. And and for that, then it's recommended to do that. So it's not like a dire necessity. So you have something that's very easy when a person they're traveling. It's recommended to shorten the salat. Then you have other cases where a person, they should not do it only in very extreme circumstances. The person, they have the leeways in other circumstances. So that's what this talks about. And the ulama, they make that. And sometimes they use the term daruri, daruriyat, and haja. So they have different levels of it. Haja means a need, and daruri means a necessity. And they say one is more extended than the other one. Okay, so that's what it is. Turra, a muftara. That means when a person, they're in need. Would you like to read number 2?
And does not find except haram,
yes,
forbidding, he can then say eat from it.
Yes. So what happens if a person, they're in that stage of starvation and hunger and verge of dying or whatever extent the ulama, they say, and he can't find anything except haram to eat, then the person, they can eat from it. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He allows a person to do that. So that's what this lesson is about, where the person, they're given that leeway. And again, in Arabic, I think I mentioned this before, the word in Arabic is rukhas. And with the ulama, they explain that what happens is when a person, they go to a shopkeeper and they want to buy something that maybe is expensive, and the shopkeeper makes it less. And they say rukhis in Arabic, rukhis, which means the price is much less. So the rukhas is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Normally speaking, people, they have to do things in a way that's more. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it less, makes it easier. So that's the same word that's used, leeway, rukhas. Okay, inshallah, let's read number 3.
What maintains his life?
Yes. So this is what he says here, because a person, if they're on that verge of starvation, if they don't eat, then what's going to happen? Mamut, they're going to die. How long can a person survive without eating and drinking for? If they're in that extreme situation, maybe at the most a couple days, a few days, and then after that, that's it. They're going to die from, lack of eating and drinking. So then, if a person, they only have things that are normally haram, then, then they're allowed to do that to save their life. That's what the Shaykh says. To keep the person alive, keeps the person his life. Okay, should we read number 4?
If he can find what is unanimous on the forbiddance and difference on it, then eat what is differ upon.
Yes. Okay, so what happens is in the rulings of Islam, you have some things where all the ulama they say are haram. Like for example, pig, pork. All the ulama, ijma al ulama, they say that's haram. Then you have some things which is ikhtilaf in the ulama. Like for example, alligator. No alligator. No, timsah, the alligator. Some of the ulama they say it's allowed, some of them they say it's not allowed. So it's ikhtilaf. So what happens is if a person is they're on that verge of starvation and they have something that all the ulama they say is haram, and then you have something that's ikhtilaf, then eat what's ikhtilaf. Or eat what is ikhtilaf. And like in the Hanbali school, they say that the alligator is not allowed, but because there's ikhtilaf in it, then a person, if they have a choice of eating pig or alligator, eat the alligator. That's what the point is. Eat the one that there's ikhtilaf in. You know, so that's the point that he makes there. So two choices a person they have. One, which is unanimous that it's forbidden, and the other one, there's a difference of opinion on it, whether it's allowed or not, then eat what is the difference of opinion. That's what the Sheikh, that's what he mentioned, Ibn Qudamah, on that particular issue of a person there with that. So that's the case of the extreme need, the ittar or muttar, if a person there on the verge of starvation. Okay, to read the next one, number 5.
If he does not find except food that is for someone else that is in the same situation as he is, like his strongest starvation, then it is not allowed for him to take it.
Yes. So what happens is if there's a group of people and some other people, they have, they have some food and they're on the verge of starvation also, then he can't take that food from the other person because the other person is in need as well, just like he is. So he doesn't have, so he doesn't have that same excuse and leeway that he normally has. So that's what's saying. Like, let's say, for example, you have a plane crash. Okay, and the plane crashes, and then what happens after the plane crashes? There's like 10 people that are still alive, and they're all looking for food to eat. And then another person has some food. Then the other person, they can't take that food and say, "Oh, I'm on the verge of starvation, so I'm going to eat this food from the other person." He's not allowed to do that because the other person is in the same situation. He's on the verge of starvation as well. So that's the point that you have there. If there's other people on there as well, then it's not allowed for him to take the food from the other person because the other person is in need of it just like he is. Okay, inshallah. So let's go to number 6.
If the person is wealthy upon it, he takes from it from his wealth.
Yes. Okay, inshallah. If the person is wealthy upon it, he takes it from his wealth. In Arabic it says, وَإِن كَانَ مُسْتَغْنِيًا عَنْهُ أَخَذُهُ مِنْهُ بِثَمَنِهِ. Okay, what this means is that if they take somebody else's food and they ate it and they drank it or they took it, and because it was on the verge of starvation, then the person, they have to reimburse that person for what the person they took from his wealth that he has. So he has to do that. And the other situation is like in that plane crash where you have other people that are there, and then if he has wealth, then he should pay for the food that he takes. So that's what he's saying, no? In the case of a person, they're wealthy, and they're on the verge of starvation, then he should pay for it. Okay, shall I read number 7?
If he is prevented from it, he takes it forcefully, and he is responsible to compensate him when he is able.
Yes. Okay, so what happens is if he's in a situation like somebody has a tree with some food on it and the person is on the verge of starvation and dying, then what he can do is he can take from that tree even though the owner doesn't allow him, but then afterwards he has to repay the owner. The previous one said if he's wealthy, then he's got to repay them right away. But in the case where the person, they don't have the funds, to repay the person, then he's got to repay them later on, when he gets the funds. And that situation might happen to some people because people, what they do is they work, right, and they get they earn money to pay their bills and their expenses. But then what happens is if a person, they lose their job, they don't have any money coming in, they don't have anything. and then they reach to the point where there's no food. What happens? You know, the person they might be in that state there where he has no money and no food. Then what's he got to do? You know, he's got to survive. So then what he might do is go and take some food, but then he's responsible to pay back the person that he took the food from. So this is talking about the extreme situation where a person, they're in dire need. So if a person, they end up like that, then that's what they have to do. Okay, over here in America, you don't really find that happening. But if you go to Somalia, right, there's a lot of poor people over there. They're on the verge of starvation. They don't have any money. They don't have nothing. So they're really, really poor. So what they're going to do, if they don't eat anything, they're going to die. So what they end up doing, because of that extreme situation, they might eat something that doesn't belong to them. But then what happens is, in the future, when they get the funds for it, they should reimburse the person that they eat from. That's the point that they have on number 7. Number 6 was if the person, they have money, then they pay for it immediately. You know? But the other one, if they don't have any money, if they're so poor, they don't have nothing, then they're responsible to repay for it afterwards. Okay, inshallah, so to we're on number 8.
If the starvation person gets into a fight with the one with food,
Mm-hmm.
if the starvation person is killed, he is a martyr.
He's a shaheed, yes. Okay, inshallah. So what happens is a person, they might go to some place and he's really on the verge of dying and starving, and the other person doesn't want to give him the food. And then what happens, he gets into a fight with the other person, and then the person that has the food, he might kill him, you know, to protect his property and things like that. So the sheikh, he said, if that happens, that person is a martyr, is a shaheed, you know, in that case. So that's what the sheikh, that's what the sheikh, he says in the Hanbali school. Because, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed the person to do it, so he's not doing anything wrong, even though he's on the verge of starvation because of that extreme situation. You know, he's taking the food in order to make himself survive. And then the other person, he doesn't want to give him the food, so that he ends up being killed. So you have, it's considered to be a shaheed. And you find that the shuhada, it refers to people that go on the battlefield and killed in the battlefield in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also a person, they can be considered to be a shaheed for other things. You know, if they do things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they get killed, they're considered to be a shaheed. And one hadith, it says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if a person has a stomach illness and they die from the stomach illness, he's a shaheed. If a person, they die from a fire, he's a shaheed. If a person, so there's a lot of other situations where a person, they're considered to be a shaheed on there. And basically it means that a person, they do things that what they're supposed to do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they end up being dead and being killed. So that's what the shaykh mentioned here. If that's the case where the person, they're in the extreme verge of starvation and dying, and he finds some food that belongs to somebody else, and he goes and he eats in order to keep himself alive, and the other person kills him, you know, then he's a shaheed. That's the point that's there. Okay, inshallah, let's go to number 9.
This is وَلَا قَتَلَهُ مَضَانَهُ.
Yes.
On the one that killed falls the responsibility.
Yes. So the person that killed him, to protect, to keep his property, that's what the sheikh, he says. The person, he has a right to take the food because he is dying, so he's going and eating. And if the person, they kill him and say, no, I'm not going to give you any food, then what happens is the person that didn't give him the food has that responsibility. And that shows you that about Allah, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at people. That's how the sheikh, he considers the people. If there is another Muslim brother or sister, they're on the verge of starving and dying, and the person has some food, then they should help him. You know, in that case, it becomes obligatory for the person to help him. Not to be in the case, no, don't take any of this food, or I'm going to kill you. Then he ends up killing him. If he does that, then he's doing something wrong, you know, for that. Because the other person that wants the food is not doing anything wrong, because he is about to die. So, you know, that's what the sheikh says. So he mentions that point there. Okay, inshallah, so go to number, we're on number 11.
10.
Number 10.
If the one that prevents the food is killed, there's no responsibility because of it.
Okay, so that's how the sheikh, he considers the person that's on the verge of starving is not doing anything wrong. No, because of that extreme situation that he's going to die, so he has to eat something. But he considers the other person that refuses to help him, he considers that person to be wrong, you know. So that's what the Sheikh he says over here. And if it says that if the other person ends up being killed because of the fight, then the person that was starving, he doesn't have the responsibility of killing somebody. He's excused in that circumstance. Okay, so what this means, I mean, this is what the viewpoint of the Sheikh, he says, and that's his opinion, and that's what he looks at it. So one person there, he's about to die because he doesn't have any food, anything, and what happens is he finds some food that belongs to somebody else. He said, let me eat this to stay alive. So then he has an excuse, he's not doing something wrong. But the other person that has the food, he says, no, don't take any of this food. This is my food, I'm not gonna give you any of it. They get into a fight, and it gets to the point where, it's fatal. One person kills the other person. So the Sheikh is saying over here, the poor person, he doesn't have that responsibility if he ends up killing the other person, because he's such of a dire need that to eat the food that he's allowed to do that in that case. Okay, inshallah, so that's number 10. Let's go to number 11.
It is not allowed to use haram forbidden for medicines.
Okay, so now he talks about the case of the medicine. If there are things that are haram, a person, they can't use it as dawa, as a medicine. And this is mainly talking about the khamr and about things that make a person sukara, because those things are haram. Kullu sukara khamr, and kullu khamr is forbidden. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said for people, they said, I'm drinking this khamr because it's as a medicine. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it's not a medicine, it just makes things worse. So that's what the Shaykh he said. And usually in the Hanbali school, he goes by the hadiths from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there are hadiths that mention that, that the khamr, and the khamr refers to not just wine, but all the things that make a person intoxicated and drunk and not able to have their sense, befog the mind, that refers to that. And that's what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. It's not a medicine, it doesn't cure things, it just makes things worse when you have those medications. So that's what the Shaykh he said. For medication, it's not allowed to take haram things for medication. Okay, number 17.
Number 17 is it say, Wala sharab al khamar liman atasha.
Yes. So what happens also when you have khamr, for alcohol, even if a person, they're thirsty, then they're not allowed to drink the alcohol. But then he mentions also on number 13 more extent of it. So because the alcohol is forbidden, it's haram, and just because a person they have a little bit of thirst doesn't mean that a person they're allowed to drink the alcohol. But it says on number 13, if it's to the point. Would you read that one, number 13?
It is allowed to save one's life from choking if one does not find any drink beside it.
Yes. So then the Sheikh, he says the excuse for drinking the khamr, if the person, they're choking, and the choking means that they have food stuck in their throat and they can't breathe. And if they're in that situation and the only thing that they have is the khamr, then the person, they can drink the khamr in order to remove the choking, so a person, they don't die. So he said that's allowed for that. But not in the case where a person, they're very thirsty, to the extent that they're thirsty, they're not allowed to take the khamr. But in choking, it's okay to take the khamr in order to remove the choke from the person. Okay, inshallah, so that's what the Shaykh he mentions on these issues, on the muftara, on the necessity. If a person, they're on the verge of starving, dying, they're allowed to do the things that normally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made forbidden. Allah mentions that in the Quran, that they don't have a sin, they do it because of the dire necessity that they have. So those are the issues that's mentioned over here. And these things are what the ulama, they have to make that ruling. It's not like a person, they say, they go to a place and there's pork, they say, oh, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat this pork. It's not that. The ulama, they have to examine the situation and base it on what's mentioned in the deen and the rules of the fiqh, based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down, and they researched it and studied it, and they know to what extent those things are allowed. Okay, inshallah. Alright, so it's